To Ren's post, I was sold a beat that they shouldn't have sold me because it contains a stolen sample. Filing a copyright strike on the video, that's a pretty aggressive move.
And you get 3 of those and your whole channel can be taken down.
As a music attorney, I've dealt with both sides of these disputes where they have to do with leased beats or licensed beats. And sometimes I've represented the producer, and sometimes I've represented the artist. And it's interesting what comes up because often it's usually some similar types of complaints. In one situation, we have someone who signed something and they didn't get an attorney, or the contract was really bad, or no one signed anything and they just had a verbal agreement. Well, UK rapper Ren, who I was just loosely familiar with, and that I had just seen some of his stuff on TikTok, and I liked the visuals. I thought it was really interesting. And so one of you emailed me and was telling me about kind of what's going on, and that his song Sick Boy, I guess the video on YouTube received a copyright strike, and he is quite in the thick of it with the producer of the beat, Kujo. And so took some time today, because this was all just very, very fast, but I wanted to get up to speed as quickly as possible. So we went and scrubbed through all the comments that, you know, Ren has been leaving on the original beat on YouTube, and then also the producer has been responding. And so it was helpful to get a little bit of context based on that. So we're going to go through, and right now, that's how we're going to kind of look at this, and I'll give you my input for what they have shared, because I don't have the actual agreement or the alleged agreement, but I do know what they've said. And then I can also offer my experience on how this typically works out and maybe who's in the wrong here.
Make sure that you guys are tagging Ren. We've reached out to, see if he wanted to make a comment on the show. Going to be reaching out to Kujo as well. This is very, very interesting. I was just turned on to Ren. I've never heard of Ren. Miss Crystal is a little bit familiar from seeing things. I had no idea, but I will tell you the track is sick. The beat's sick. I'm glad that I was introduced to Ren.
And I can see why this, beat was used. I thought it was super cool. And if you guys go and listen to it, either version, because at least as of today of recording this, Ren's song is still on Spotify.
Yeah.
Okay. So in any case, if you go and, listen to this, you hear that there's a choir, and, it has a very dark pop is what we do, kind of feel to it, which is awesome. And so, setting aside the creativity, I thought it was pretty cool. So what we did is we went back through the comments. Okay. And so starting from about 3 days ago,
and this was on Ren's community post. Ren's community is so active, and we're going to be talking about not necessarily all the comments that the community has been making on his behalf, but they have been going to bat for him. They are flooding Kujo's comments. They are flooding Ren's comments. It is a very hardcore, active community, and it's I love seeing this because this guy's independent, from what I understand. I checked out a few things. Really good stuff. But again, we are taking this on face value on everything that we're reading and making the kind of analysis for it. We're not coming from a super fan. So let us know any Ren facts that you have in the comments or anything like that, because we're literally learning today. I am, for sure.
So the first thing that I saw, the person who reached out to me just shared 2 of Ren's community posts. And so Sick Boy, and this is what he said: Sick Boy music video will be back online very soon. For anyone wondering, the music business is very annoying sometimes. There will be misunderstandings with how song publishing was registered. So I guess, and we'll go through this with some of the additional comments that were made right on the producer's video. So this was one of Ren's posts, and he goes, "Feel free to ask the producer to put my video back online. I have nothing to hide or to lie about here. I have receipts for the whole situation and paid for and licensed this beat fairly." So the first question that I have is, was the license exclusive? Was it non-exclusive? Because if you look at the actual beat that the producer posted in the description, which is very common for these types of, producers who promote on YouTube, he has a little thing, and he goes, free for non-commercial / monetized use only. And so when I first read that, I'm like, oh, that's a little confusing actually by itself, because it goes non-commercial means you aren't making money from it. And I'm like, hey, I'm using your beat for an educational purpose. So non-commercial is going to be a little bit confusing for the average person, right? Because most people are going to take it, make a song with it, and then put it on music platforms. So you're making money from streaming and digital downloads and stuff like that. So that was the first thing I saw. I'm like, ugh. But going back to this post, it goes, I paid for it, right? Ren says he actually paid for it. And so it sounds like he had an actual direct deal with the producer. And actually, he says he has a contract, And actually, as you can hear, did a lot of work on the beat after the fact too, right? So we go to a question that one of you guys had earlier in this conversation, which is, what if you take a sample, or in this case, an entire instrumental, and you do something to it, and you adapt it in some kind of way? It's still sampling. Even if you transpose it, even if you put some cool effects on it, it's yeah. But that's a little bit of the issue here, right? Because there is a claim in regards to this choir sample that it was not this producer's. And I don't know where it came from, but when I heard Ren's version, I was like, oh my gosh, that children's choir sounds really familiar. So I don't know if I've actually heard it, but it sounded really familiar.
So somebody in the chat is just put something. I don't know if this is the case, but he's seeming to answer that question. He's saying the original chant video title is Bray per Trunco Ho Dear Petruna. So I don't know if that's it, but this guy seems to be a fan by the Ren Not Ren. So
no, and that's why you guys are helpful. Even if you're watching this later, drop a comment down below if you have some additional insight, because we'll be reading them. So anyway, going back to Ren's post, I was sold a beat that they shouldn't have sold me because it contains a stolen sample, which they didn't inform me about. And there's been an issue with publishing on the back end, and that's like 10% of the effed up situation. There have been other fuck ups behind the scene, but the situation is a lot deeper. So he goes on to say, I've been working like reasonably in good faith with the producer and trying to get this publishing sorted out. Even though there was a mistake, when he made a mistake for selling an uncleared sample. So, based on just this first comment, because Ren is saying there was a contract and he's saying that I'm trying to work it out. There's something to do with the publishing. There was an unlicensed sample. And that, he goes, this has become insane and greedy. That's what basically is happening like as of today. But we do know that Kujo has been chiming in.
Yeah, he's been responding on his page on the original beat.
So Kujo's response is, he goes, we can talk on Instagram or email because, Ren was like, bro, talk to me. I'm trying to get this sorted out. So, when I kind of saw that, I go, look, there seems to be attorneys involved, at least on Ren's side, because that's what Kujo is saying.
Right.
And he's like, I've been trying to talk to your attorneys for a year now. And, they basically haven't been able to come to terms here. And so, with kind of filing a copyright strike or a copyright claim on the video, that's a pretty aggressive move.
For sure. Because, you get 3 of those and your whole channel can be taken down. And who knows if he's had any other issues in the past or not.
Yeah. And the producer was, he said in the chat anyway, that he, has been basically waiting for like a year. And, the attorneys seem to be like really slow to respond on behalf of Ren. He's like, look, I didn't want to file this, but kind of you've given me no choice. Right. So as in, you're obviously a music producer, but for you music producers kind of watching, taking everything at face value as true, because we don't know anything different. If a year has gone by and there's this allegation that there's been a breach of contract and there's been unpaid royalties and this and that, he goes, I finally had no choice. But again, it's pretty scary when you do get a copyright claim and obviously, the video is down.
Some fans have tried to re-upload it too, so I wonder what's going to happen with their video as well.
Become your own record label, which is literally, if you're like, hey, I want to start a record label, cool, I got you. Understand the entire music business. I want to set up my LLC. I want to do the marketing. It's a lot. So for example, sync licensing, for example, music marketing, it's significantly cheaper than anything you would ever get from a law firm as far as all the stuff that comes with it. And you want to make 6 figures from your music career and you want to do this for real, like, I'm going to give you what you need.
But this is one of those things where, Ren's argument at face value as well. He's claiming that he's a big fan of Kujo's. That's why he wanted to work with them. He was a big fan of the beat. When his song was released, he didn't make Kujo take down his beat. In his description of Kujo's beat, it says that, it's free for use as long as you credit him in the name.
It's a non-commercial use, but it goes non-commercial / monetized. So I don't know if he meant to say non-monetized use. So it wasn't super clear to me, but I just go like, if you're telling people that they can freely go and download your song to make their own songs, what you're telling them is that they can go and use it for commercial purposes. So there needs to be clarity. And I think with producers who are like, hey, you don't have to sign a license with me, just freely use it, just make sure to credit me. That's really common. And then what they do is that they go, you know, people will reach out and do separate deals, and they go, if you want an exclusive license, I'll stop giving this to anybody new. All the people who already got it, can't do anything about that. And that may have been what happened here. And so, you know, we need to actually see the license agreement, but let's pretend that's what it was.
But, you know, for the artists, you're a rapper, you're a singer, and you're working with producers, you know, when you are getting beats for them, you are assuming that everything is good to go. You're assuming that all the samples are clear. And, you know, we talk about Splice, how you can use their samples and stuff, but you have to get that license that, you know, artists were just, and producers were just kind of blown away when we kind of were exposing that. And that was the thing that got our video copyright strike. It was because we were showing the license. And when you get a sample, you have to hit those 3 dots, and then you have to generate a license for it and fill it all out with your legal name. And for each one of the samples, it's not like a blanket license. So you need to make sure that you are keeping track of all your samples. As, you know, artists, and we get these songs from these producers, we expect everything to be clear. We expect if you're using anything that's in there, it's good to go. And it sucks when you don't know it, the song's out, the song's been out for however long, sample wasn't caught, and then it gets caught, and then you are potentially facing, you know, all those copyright plus, you know, 150K per infringement, legal fees, all kinds of stuff that can go on, and you didn't know. You just got to beat. I could see the absolute frustration on both sides.
Guys, you got to have contracts. Just be super clear on what the terms are, who's getting paid, when are you getting paid, and if there's back-end royalties, how does that work? And then some confusion sometimes that comes up is in regards to publishing versus the royalties, the income that happens from the master, the final version that was, in this case, you know, created by Ren. And so these are 2 different revenue streams. And so sometimes it's not properly stated in the contract, because publishing is through your performance rights organization. So like in the United States here, it's BMI, ASCAP, PRS in the UK. But in any case, if we're like, hey, like, you know, Orko and I are going to split the publishing 50-50, that means anything made on the composition, right, is split by the organization and paid by the organization. Versus if Ren's distributing a song himself, that's for the actual master. And so monies that come in through that are paid 100% to Ren. And so whatever the contract says should control. But sometimes people just misunderstand. And someone's like, hey, publishing. And then what they really meant was the earnings from the actual master. So like through the distributor. So the money actually going into the artist's account, because those are 2 different things. So anyway, so 3 days ago, you know, we hear Ren, he posted, I have waited, trying to get this resolved. You're being, you know, basically like unreasonable. And then also just kind of, you know, like I said, calling out the producer and being like, talk to me. And I guess the producer did respond.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, I'm trying to, you know, negotiate with your lawyers for months, and there's no satisfactory responses happening.
Well, he's saying, he was telling him, you know, you need to get a new lawyer since your current one obviously hasn't kept you updated in the last year.
When I read that, can I be honest? It's just like, I've done this for 10 years now. And sometimes this might not be the case here. Sometimes it's literally the attorneys that are screwing everything up.
Yeah.
I had this case where
100%.
everything was going fine. Like the parties had an agreement and everything, whatever. And then, you know, usually getting an attorney can be really good to help. And sometimes you get the attorney and the attorney doesn't know what they're doing. They start telling you stuff that isn't the law, or they misunderstand something and they just like blow it, or they don't respond. And they don't inform their client. And I don't know if that happened here, but I'm just saying it does happen.
Both saying that, you know, they don't want any bad blood between them, but there is. Ren is very active in the comments of these videos. Now, if you go to Ren's community page on his YouTube, you can find all the detailed, every word for word. It's a rabbit hole if you go down. We're kind of paraphrasing some of this stuff. But, you know, he's even responding to, you know, other people that are in the chat and other supporters. Ren saying, you know, he has copies of everything. He can, you know, it gets pretty heated though. He can say what he likes to say about the reality situation, but he has screenshots of all their conversations, including the many lies that he's telling him on. It's on you to clear the sample once the song exceeds a certain amount of streams. The contract should change when I paid for an unlimited license. This guy is Ren's saying words like, this guy is bitter, song is successful and he isn't getting paid for. But if you sell a painting to someone that the painting increases in value, you don't go to the buyer a year later and ask for more money.
And without having the agreement, obviously all we can do is speculate. But what I can tell you is all of these, you know, lease agreements, license agreements that I've reviewed, where sometimes, you know, it gets, A, there's a lack of clarity, but B, there will be things in these license agreements where they're like, hey, we're giving you a license to like make a new thing and you're paying us money and whatever. But then it's kind of hidden. They're like, you can't use this to create an audio visual. And, you know, someone might read that and be like, you know, whatever. And so they don't see it. And what that means is that you can't make a video. And whenever I see this, I'm like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. A musician who's putting out their song using your instrumental can't make a music video. And even then, what about social media videos? So there's that big piece. But in the stream count, and there was a comment by the guitar guy. So that one that you just read in regards to the streams, right? So having an unlimited license, this is also kind of where sometimes you get caught up because it'll be like, you have this license up until, you know, 10,000 plays, 100,000 plays, a million plays. And then there's something that triggers that allows the producer to get more money. And I don't know if that's what happened here, but obviously that can cause some upset if it's missed by the artist because they're like, what the heck? I thought I was just paying you this one time. But equally, if you're the producer and you're like, that was the deal, I gave you this like smoking great deal on this song for an exclusive license, and then it went huge, which, you know, my understanding is this went real big in the UK, you know, and you owe me money.
On this one, it's hard to tell without seeing any kind of contract or not having more of a discussion because you're reading posts, you know what I mean, quickly written posts, text posts on communities. But I will say I definitely see it from, you know, both sides. As a producer myself, I want to make sure that, you know, I'm taken care of. It sounds like they did have a contract in place, but their lawyers are interpreting it different ways. So I don't know if that's a testament to how the contract was written or what kind of, you know, what it was, if it was a split sheet or it was a full-on contract. If it is true, and again, I'm only going by face value of what I'm reading because I don't know any of these artists or producers. I'm just learning, going to go down the rabbit hole. I'm interested. They're good. Is this the sample that wasn't cleared? That seems kind of, whether you wanted it to be or not, deceptive to the artist that you're giving it to, and kind of feels bad faith. I mean, even if they all, I don't know, if they all knew about it, then I guess that's one thing. But from what I was reading, you know, he was made aware that sample wasn't cleared and it wasn't good to go way after the fact the thing was released and everything like that. So I don't know, but I definitely want to be kind of paying attention to this because this is something that happens all the time.
So guys, on these agreements, if it's a properly drafted agreement, because I don't know who drafted this, I don't know what it looks like. But in most cases, we have indemnification language, meaning at some point in the contract, it should talk about if there's a claim by a third party, and especially if it's like a producer kind of lease agreement, we specifically say, you are agreeing that this is free of samples. Or sometimes it says, hey, I'm the producer. You are agreeing as the artist. I'm not responsible for clearing anything in this, right? So it says that to some degree of whose responsibility it is. So like, it's really important to look at that. But look, the question here is, well, what do they do? Because I mean, look, we jump in and all the attorneys, I look at this and I'm interpreting that, but it's always, what's the solution here? Because, you know, Ren wants a solution. He wants this video up. Right. And he's cultivating his community and he is actively engaged in the comments here. So what do we do now? Which is, if you have an enforceable contract, because the producer is saying that he has claims. But what I'm saying is that the artist, Ren, may have claims too, because if it says in the agreement that the producer is providing a sample-free, claim-free song, then that means they both can sue each other. But regardless, who does that help? Usually, one or both of the parties cannot afford to pay for a lawsuit. It's very expensive. Just having attorneys kind of spit and spat back and forth on emails is really expensive. And so for me, I litigate all the time, but I really try to resolve this stuff and come up with a solution. I'm like, what's it going to take to make this go away? Because now everyone's pissed at each other. And there's an additional layer on this of, I want to kind of hurt the other side, whether, you know, people say it or not. And just to be like,
absolutely,
what's it going to take for us to be able to walk away? And that's the conversation that I would have regardless of who I was representing.
And not be so much in your feelings. It's tough, you know, especially when you're dealing with the frustration and whatever, and you're sitting there in the comments. I mean, both of them, I can imagine them every time somebody leaves a comment or whatever, they want to react to it. Their blood starts boiling. You know what I mean? I know that even just dealing with our Splice copyright strike that we got, like, I was upset. It's not good for your blood pressure, but I see where both of them are kind of coming from. And, you know, maybe like you were, to your point, you know, maybe a lot of this is also being escalated just from these attorneys. And, you know, and you have to make sure that you have a really good attorney on your side that's looking to resolve things quickly and the most painless, not trying to bill hours and drag things out, which, you know.
Well, and just so, also don't ever make assumptions. It's funny, I say this to our attorneys as well. I'm like, even if you're dealing with an attorney on the other side, never assume that they're doing their job or that they're doing their job very well. And so when you have a situation like this where someone is claiming that someone else is holding their music video hostage, which is AKA they have a claim, the video is down. So you're literally holding the creative thing hostage, whether you are entitled to or not under the law. That's part of the kind of negotiation piece here. And so then coming back and being like, well, has your attorney filed a counter notification? I don't know. Did someone file and be like, hey, here's the license and provide all this stuff? Like, so in actually meaningfully resolving this, and this goes back to what I was saying. You have the attorneys, right? Or you have the producer all by himself and you have attorneys for Ren. Regardless, the parties can talk. You know what I mean? Attorneys can't freely talk to everybody, but the two sides can talk. And it just gets tough when now you are like really angry about it.
They made a really great song that had an impact. From what I see from the Ren's community, they are unbelievable supporters to this guy. And it kind of messes up the legacy of the song. Like it's if they don't work this out and aren't able to, dap it up at the end of it, like every time that guy performs this really popular song, I mean, is he going to have that feeling? The fans are very involved in the drama. So are they going to have a feeling when they hear it? Are they going to be like, oh, I love this song. Dude, you remember when Kujo like took it down? Like, are they going to have those conversations? It sucks. And the fact that, it actually is all public and it's out there and everybody knows the business. But then at the same time, that's how you get change, is also by letting people know. In some instances, he left his last community post, a day ago as well. And he just like, let's make it public. They pointed out that they could claim 100% of all royalties on the song over YouTube content ID technically, and a loophole in the contract. Sadly, that's the way the legal system is weighted against small artists. There may be weight behind this. So they're not just asking for more, they're threatening, or as Kujo says, pointing out that they could claim the whole thing if I don't agree to the terms. These kind of situations are really important for our community to know, to know what to look out so they can avoid these things. If you're a producer, if you're an artist, what somebody dropped the ball, maybe they both dropped the ball. What could they do to work this out, and what can be done to avoid these situations in the future?
Yeah, I was kind of telling Orko before the show, I'm like, I don't know, maybe I need to jump in and see if I can mediate this for them, because it sounds, what I'm hearing is that they both want to get resolution. They're too far away apart on terms. And what I would say is that neither one of you probably wants to actually have this become a lawsuit, because there's issues with this contract. And that's what I can tell without even looking at it. So, if it was me, I would say you probably need to get someone else involved to try to help and get this squashed.
And the most important thing that you have to try to do in any of these situations that you're doing, if you do find yourself in a lawsuit, if you do find yourself in a battle with another creator or just whatever, is try not to get so emotional and try not to be in your feelings too much. Try to go by the facts. What do you call it? The cost benefit analysis, where you have to decide, is it all of it worth the trouble that I'm putting in and the stress that I'm putting over myself? But in this case, on a 6 million viewed video, and potentially your album, I would be pretty stressed.
Regardless of where you guys land on this, be sure to leave a comment down below, tag the artist, tag the producer, and we'll keep you guys posted on this.